What is up, everybody? Love you guys. Check this out. Welcome to another episode of the Bowman Legacies podcast, where we're brought to you by, of course, Bowman Legacies, making life better for the blue-collar worker, one CEO at a time. Hey, look, last week we had, I put out a question just saying, or 2 weeks ago, hey, what do you want to hear about? What do you want to learn about? And someone had said, hey, I want to learn about understanding work-life balance a little better. So we went ahead and did that episode, and I got the flu. And I apologize for all this coughing in advance. But I wanted to get this one out because I think it's very important, because the next question was posted by someone by the name of Patty Mitchell. And she said, how do we deal with this millennial problem of cell phones and this generational gap? The constant usage of cell phones and them, pardon me, being a distraction at work. Man, I get that. And I'll tell you how I've approached it in the past on the job site. And I tell you how my clients are approaching it now and what I coach them to do. But before I do that, I want to tell you a story. When I was a little kid, I remember the night before, my father had talked about how disrespectful, wild, and unruly Generation X was. And the next day, my grandmother lived right next door to us. So the next day I went down, I saw her on her little porch swing thing that she had. And I went down and I sat with her. And I remember me telling her about what my father had said. And she laughed out loud. And she said, you know what's funny about that, Michael? She said, his generation was just as bad. They were so disrespectful. They were so wild. They were so unruly. And when she said that, it hit me, and I thought to ask a question. And I said, Grandma, did your parents think your generation was unruly and disrespectful? And sure enough, guess what? She got to thinking about it, and she said, to come to think about it, absolutely. My parents felt as though the previous generation was so disrespectful and unruly. So I saw a pattern here at a very young age. And what I've come to realize is every generation has its challenges. Unfortunately, the generation before that spends an awful lot of time complaining about them and not having empathy and trying to reach these people where they live. And for me, what's made me a successful leader, what's made me very successful on the job site, very successful with my clients, I can deal with any generation. Because what I end up doing is studying how they need to hear things. And I don't spend a lot of time talking about to my peers or being frustrated about the generational gap or why these people see things differently than I do. What I try to do is start with empathy and meet them where they live. What I've come to learn is this. If you want to control, or not control, it's a terrible word, but influence how these hands are working at work, you have got to first appeal to their heart. And the only way that you can do that is to get through the gateway of the mind. And the gateway is called trust. You see, when we first start with empathy and we have consistent care in these people's lives, they begin to trust us. What we really want is authority. We want what I call fence. And I do this with my clients all the time. All because you may not have fence. In other words, all because you can't build a boundary. And you can't just make a demand because you're in that place in leadership where you're not the one making the rules. That you don't have fence in these people's lives doesn't mean you can't influence them. And I would prefer people not to have fence and move towards influencing. Because it is in that place of influencing and caring for them, you engage with those employees. And when you engage with them, you empower them. And the more that you empower that employee, the more they trust that the things you're trying to share with them is out of your heart and for their best. The more they hear you complain, the more they hear you talk down about their character, the more that they resist the things that you're trying to tell them. Another thing is, you need to be the example. You can't be the one on the phone. And you might have a distraction that's all completely different. Now, I'm not saying this person Patty does, but I'm just saying that other people a lot of the times will push other employees to react in such a way that they themselves aren't doing. And that is going to put a great deal of distrust there. So the idea that you're going to influence them when you're not living up to that same potential, let me tell you something. It's never going to happen for you. These people are going to continue to repeat this behavior and other negative behaviors because you aren't the example to show. Now, if you are that person that has fence, you are that person that is able to make those rules and those regulations, I'm going to tell you what I did. I had 75 employees, hot seating equipment, in a very dangerous mine site, 6 days a week, sometimes even 7 when we had to push hard. And the problem with that is the cell phones, man, they were a huge problem. And people were getting distracted. Now, when you're running heavy equipment and you're getting distracted, even if it's just, trying to seek out a song on the phone or you're on the Bluetooth, you're distracted. And the problem with that is when you have a heavy equipment area, you can get killed or kill someone else. It is very easy to get distracted in such a way, and it only takes that split second to really get hurt. And so I made a hard and fast rule. No cell phones. No cell phones until you get your break. None whatsoever. Now, I had one guy threaten to whip me, and I had another guy threaten to leave. Both of them, I told them they could go. If their passion was so much for the cell phone, make a living off of it. But with what you're doing now, gentlemen, you're going to get somebody killed, and I can't gamble with other people's lives all because you want to be on a cell phone. We have so tried to be nicey nice, we forget to have the hard conversations. We have forgotten how important it is to have those hard conversations with people and lay down rules with love. Look, I never said, I hate you guys and you're dumb, or, hey, you stupid millennials. I said, guys, look, we're noticing through the drone footage, we're noticing through us watching, we're noticing through our incidents and near misses that the cell phones are a real problem. And so therefore, we are going to take care of that problem because you guys won't. We've mentioned it, but you're not being disciplined enough to do that. So we need to take this from you. And then therefore, guys, we built a fence that they couldn't get over. One guy said, I'm going to buy a burner phone. And he did. And I let him go. I sent him home. Another guy, like I said, hey, if you do that, I'll quit. And I'm like, well, you might as well just go ahead now. And yes, did that hurt us not having those bodies? Sure. But are you more focused on keeping people in the seat, or are you more focused on getting people safe and doing production in a timely way? You have to have those. If you have fence, you've got to have those hard conversations. I was so sad to hear Jimmy Starbuck the other day talking, and he said, he saw somebody say that every hour they get a Facebook break. And he said, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. And I could not agree more. What you're doing is you're enabling the bad behavior. You're feeding the addiction. I know this seems stark, but it's just the same as saying, well, look, this generation of people really love to smoke crack. And it's a real problem on site. And so we're going to let them every hour have a crack break. It's the same thing. I know it's not as stark and as drastic, but cell phone usage right now is a real problem. But if you don't have fence, I'm going to say that influencing these people that you're working with is one thing, but also influencing your boss, helping them understand, look, this is how much on average people are utilizing phones at work. And this is how many hours you're paying for someone to be on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever the case may be. You're actually paying for this person to do something other than production. And I know we need to be people first, but we don't need to be enablers. And I know that we want to appeal to other generations so that they'll work with us, but at the same time, not at the cost of abandoning reason and good old-fashioned leadership concepts. So, Patty, this is what I say. If you've got a fence and you can build that fence and make that rule, I would make a hard and fast rule that emergency calls only while they're on the clock. And if they take a break, absolutely. Look on Instagram, look on TikTok, do whatever it is that you want to do, and that's where the cell phone has a place. I will also say, though, Patty, it's really hard if the cell phone is a part of their work. Like, they've got to use the cell phone with certain apps or constantly texting other employees. That makes it very difficult because the distraction and temptation is definitely there. I actually saw a company take cell phones completely away and say, all you can have is this cell phone. They gave them work cell phones that would not allow certain apps to even be on it. So the only thing that they could do was text and do work things on that phone. So there's a myriad of things that you can do. In your scenario, if you don't have fences, guys, influence above you and below, and try to get this the best you can under control. However, if you aren't the shining light, an example of this, you're never going to get it curbed either. So for those of you that are listening, it's hard to make any rule and anybody follow it if you yourself aren't living up to that expectation as well. I know this is a kind of short one, only 10 minutes, but I'm trying to keep from coughing my head off. And I want you to know that I love you all very much. And I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. If you have any other questions, reach out to me. If you have any other ideas of things you want to hear on the podcast, let me know. Remember, keep going, keep growing, keep building that legacy that will far surpass your legend so you can inspire others to do the same. And my friends, that's how we change the world.